Halloween is cool. I have been a fan of the Halloweentown movie ever since it was first released, and I watched the first and second movies every single Halloween season. So when I was able to get tickets to go to Oogie Boogie Bash at Disneyland this year, I knew immediately that I wanted to make Marnie's primary outfit from the first Halloweentown movie to wear as my costume there. So this video is going to be in two parts. The first is going to be how I made this whole costume, and then the second part is going to be giving a recap and a review of our time at Oogie Boogie Bash. So I'm a very crafty person. I like to make things, but I'm not super big into like fully sewing clothes. So this was a lot to try and figure out how to put together, especially because they never really show Marnie's full, I don't know what you'd call this, robe, cloak, like head to toe in the movie. I scrubbed through the movie so many different times of trying to get screenshots of like all the different angles of it. And of course the original movie is not really available in high def. So it's kind of trying to piece things together from just kind of like the low resolution that's available on Disney Plus. So my starting point was just like trying to screenshot and get an idea of what the whole outfit looked like. And so I always just want to like dive right into making a project. With this, I had to first start and make an actual pattern for this. So luckily from like receiving packages, I had a whole bunch of this brown paper, and I started to draft a pattern that was going to be for the very base of the robe cloak. So with this, I kind of based the top dimensions of some existing pieces that I had. So I separated this pattern into a few different pieces. I had the top, which was made of 3 different panels, and then the long bottom, which was made of 5 different panels. So basically I added 2 extra triangular patterns to the bottom to kind of get some more body there. So the base layer of this is kind of like this light lilac purple. And luckily at Joann's, I found this apparel fabric that was kind of perfect. It was a little bit too dark and too saturated, but I knew this would be great to work with because I could leave a raw edge on it. This did not need to be hemmed. I wasn't expecting to find the perfect fabric at Joann's, so as a backup, I was going to use like a queen bed sheet from Amazon, but I was so happy Joann's had something that was like perfect. So I taped my whole base pattern together so that I could try it on and make sure everything fit just fine, but I tore it down into all the individual pieces so I could cut out the individual fabric components and sew it all together. So with this again, I started with the top all as one piece, 3 separate panels, and then I sewed that top together onto the bottom, which again had the 5 panels with the 2 extra triangle patterns to give it a little bit more body in the skirt. Then I was able to move on to making the top part. Now this is where I wasn't quite as lucky with finding fabric that I wanted. In the movie, Marnie's fabric is much more of a kind of like red-orange, but all I could find was something that was just kind of pure red, so I just had to go with that. I used the same pattern to put together this red top part. This just needed the 3 panels for the top, but then on the sides, they're not sewn together all the way. There's a gap left at the bottom, and I wish I had been a little bit more roomy with this because this was kind of fine and good just directly on top of the purple base fabric, but once you add in all of the nice chiffon, that adds a little bit more bulk to it. So I wish I had given myself a little bit more extra room with this, especially because this needs to be hemmed. So I wish I had been able to find some more kind of reddish orange fabric and that I had slightly adjusted my pattern to make this a little bit roomier at top, but otherwise, that's fine. And then with these, I also did a little bit of a scallop along them so that there's some kind of arches there. So when I finished the red top layer, I sewed that on to the purple base around the neckline. So the red and purple are fully connected all the way around here. Next, I added on some of the gold accents. So this was some gold ribbon trim that luckily I just already had on hand. It's 2 separate pieces that I cut so that they come together and make a V. I actually used some nail polish top coat to kind of quickly seal everything in. And then I just directly hand stitched these onto here. I then did the same exact process on the back, adding that gold trim in the shape of a V and then hand sewing that down. So that was all kind of decently easy to put together thus far. And then it got to working with all the chiffon fabric. So I got chiffon fabric in a number of colors. Again, this was kind of the closest stuff I could find that sort of matched what it looks like the colors in the movies were. And most of this fabric actually came from Amazon, and they're sold as table runners or as kind of like wedding decoration. And so I first started started working on the sleevey bits, and it took me a few attempts before I got to something that looked like it would kind of work. So with the sleeves, I had no actual pattern for them. I just kind of like winged and cut everything. But basically the top 2 layers have 3 triangles and the bottom 2 layers have 4 triangles. And the most miserable thing ever was hemming all of this chiffon. I don't have a serger, so I just had to do a kind of double tucked in hem on this. That took a really long time to do, to go all around these, but there really wasn't any other option, because if this wasn't hemmed, everything would just kind of like fall apart and disintegrate. And because things were so difficult with the hemming, what I did is I just kind of kept the top of the sleeve a straight line. I didn't try and curve it to actually fit in with the curve of the sleeve. So I had all 4 of my sleeve layers that I sewed together, and then I sewed that around here. And so these sleeves do not connect all the way around. They kind of have the extra dangles at the bottom. So it was much easier and worked out just fine, not curving that like a sleeve, and just sewing all those 4 different layers on together. With the sleeves done, then it was time for the chiffon on the bottom part. So on the front panels of this, I made 2 pieces of slightly triangular orange chiffon and 1 piece of slightly triangular pot pink chiffon. This all, again, I had absolutely no pattern for. I just kind of loosely measured based on what it looked like in the movie, how long things were, the general sort of shape things came out to be, and I tried to take advantage of as much existing hem on the fabric as I could. But there was still a lot of hemming to do around the sides. And so what I did with these is I hand sewed, and I just kind of bunched them together at the top, and then I directly hand sewed them onto the purple base. So I added the chiffon on the front and both sides, and then luckily I had some more different gold trim here, and then this is just directly hand sewn onto this, and this kind of covers up the tops of where these fabric layers are. So once I had done the front panels, I had gotten a little better feel for how to make them and the shape. So then I had to do some flowy chiffon layers for the sides and the back of the dress. So I made 2 long purple, 2 long black, and 1 orange semi-triangular pieces. I did the same hand sewed, slightly bunched them up at the top, kind of evenly spaced them out across the back, and then hand sewed them on directly onto the purple base. Now, I didn't bother or try to make the inside of this look nice. So what I also did is ironed on some fusible interfacing to the top part of this so that this would have a little bit more structure to it and also a little bit more support, since I had sewn all of the chiffon fabric on it. Then there were the fun little gold charms to add on. So I found these closed and opened gold charms on Amazon. And then I also found little gold pumpkin charms. Now in Marnie's outfit, it looks like the charm she has is a centaur or like a Sagittarius charm, but I could not find anything similar. So I thought doing a pumpkin would be really cute and fitting for Halloweentown. So I then hand sewed 3 charms onto each side of the top, 2 charms onto each side of the purple panel on front, a number of the charms onto the top of the back, and then charms along each kind of point at the base of the red fabric. I didn't realize until so much later on that there was a little bit extra on here. So I had to make some sort of trim that came into like a little bit of a braided tassel off of here. So I had some red ribbon on hand and I braided it together and made a super huge long braid. And then I went around and I hand sewed it all along as trim here with a little bit of extra that hangs off. And that was the whole base of the cloak here, but that's not the whole outfit. So after I finished the whole robe cloak, I made the shirt to wear underneath it. So Marnie's top has this kind of like unique crinkle texture, and I just couldn't find anything that I was really happy with, just like, you know, in a store. So I found this really cool, super soft, like knit checkered texture fabric at Joann's that was also like pretty much about the right color. So using some existing shirts I had as a template, I made myself a little bit of a pattern for this. And on the front of it, I just kind of cut a little bit of a deeper V, sewed them together on the top and the sides, and then I had to take apart an old grubby t-shirt I had to how to kind of get the curve and like make the sleeves correct. But I eventually made a pattern for kind of like the little cap sleeves, sewed them up, hemmed everything, sewed the sleeves on, and it ended up like fitting and working out perfectly, which was awesome because again, this was just kind of like really winged, you know, just trying to start off like with my own pattern base. And again, this fabric is so soft and comfortable. And so the top is also fully handmade. We also needed Marnie's pentagram necklace, and this was by far my favorite part because this was the most crafty out of all of this. So I started with some leather cording, some kind of wooden faux metallic beads, and then also a base pendant. So what I did is I took some 2mm foam and I sandwiched the inner metal pendant since I wanted to take advantage of the very secure jump ring that came with it. And I used some more 2mm foam to kind of create a little bit of a lip around the edge. And then on the existing necklace, I added one more jump ring to it so it looks kind of like Marnie's. To make the pentagram design itself, all I used was some hot glue, just drawing the design on. And then I painted it with some metallic silver and black paint. For the beads, I used a selection that I found at Joann's, and I didn't really feel like individually painting any of them. So I think there's a little bit more color to it in the film. And again, it was very hard to get any kind of screenshot that clearly showed the design of the necklace. So I just kind of went with the general vibes of it, using some different kind of like sizes and colors, some more wooden, some more metallic looking. And then it's nice and simple because it's just the leather cording tied in the back. Now for Marnie's pants in the movie, it looks like she's wearing some kind of like reddish pink or like pinkish red pants. And I did not want to have to make anything myself. I also didn't want to have to do any fabric dyeing. So what I did was I found some hot pink scrubs. These scrubs were so perfect because they were really comfortable. It was also hard to find like a pant that was a pretty kind of like vibrant reddish pink color. So these are maybe a little bit more pink than I'd like, but that is totally fine. And all I had to do with these was just use a seam ripper and take out the label that was on the side of them. There were two other accessories that I bought on Amazon. One is Marnie's little crystal pendant. It was hard to see what this was exactly like in the movie, but I think this was pretty good and gave similar vibes. And then the last bit was a fun rainbow scrunchie. And luckily, a few years ago, I made a Halloweentown talisman DIY out of a bubble wand. So this is definitely not very screen accurate in terms of its look, but it is so easy to make because it just is the existing bubble wand base. And then this was the perfect prop costume accessory. So for Oogie Boogie Bash, I used my Mickey Pumpkin Loungefly bag because I thought that was a nice homage to the pumpkin in Halloweentown. And then I have some mini ear holders I clip onto the side of the bag, and that clipped onto my talisman perfectly so that I had my nice accessory and I didn't have to just like carry it around. And it was an awesome look altogether. Obviously, this is a pretty niche costume, but there were a lot of cast members who were really excited to see it, and they were like, oh my gosh, it's Marnie. We also overheard a number of other guests like, oh wow, it's Marnie. In like my prior research for making the costume, I think I'd only come across like maybe 2 people who had made cosplays like this, and there was like hardly any photographs or documentation online, so I did not have to worry about somebody else showing up in the same costume as me. And so that segues actually wearing this and talking about our time at Oogie Boogie Bash. We went on September 17th, so it was a little bit earlier in the season. I'd wanted to go on September 24th, but that day sold out before I could get tickets. Getting tickets to Oogie Boogie Bash was a nightmare. The first day they went on sale to the general public, everything was broken, and it was just like a waste of like 6 to 8 hours, and then it took them like 2 weeks for them to go back up on sale, and then it was hours in the queue. So the tickets were not at all easy to get, and they are in such high demand. But I was so excited to be able to go up to the parks for the first time as a SoCal local. So I wanted to make the most of our time. So we got up to the parks around 12:30, 1 o'clock that day, and went over to the Disneyland Hotel to have lunch. And you can't get into the parks with an Oogie Boogie Bash ticket until 3 p.m. So from 1 to 3, we made our way through downtown Disney, looking at all the stores there. We went into the Grand Californian to see the awesome Cocoa gingerbread display. So that ended up timing out perfectly. We got in line to get into DCA right around 3 p.m. and it probably took like 15 minutes to get in. but we got in just in time to go to Avengers Campus and watch Spider-Man do his fun little show and fly through the air. And then we went over to the new San Francisco area since I wanted to get one of the dairy-free sundaes at Ghirardelli. The San Francisco area is so cute. We saw Baymax and Hero out there doing a meet and greet. It was just a really nice, simple upgrade that they did there. And so Oogie Boogie Bash officially didn't start until 6 p.m., so the 3 to 6 p.m. is the mix-in time. And unfortunately, that is a very crowded time. So the only other things that we really did before the party started was kind of like walk around and go through the rest of the park. We did do Mickey's PhilharMagic because there was no wait for that, and that was kind of a nice sit down, cool off. But during that time, the rides that had the lower waits were the rides that would have like no waits later on. So I'm not going to wait 25 minutes to ride The Little Mermaid when that's going to be a walk-on during the party. So it was mainly just kind of enjoying being in DCA before the party started since it was just really crowded. Right before 6 p.m. hit, we got in line to go through the Ernesto de la Cruz treat trail by the Hyperion Theater. This was the thing that I was by far the most excited about. When he debuted the other year, the videos were just amazing. It was like the coolest looking face character ever. So I was so excited for that, and that's why we had to do it number one. And Ernesto did not disappoint. It was truly the coolest like face character I've ever seen. And this year he was fully talking with the crowd, doing all these interactions, not just singing. So Ernesto was hands down the best part of the night. And it was also really nice. We only got in that treat trail line like 5 minutes before it opened, and everything moved through the line and the treats so smoothly and quickly. So that was off to a great start. But then I regret the decisions of what we did next. So the other nearby treat trails were Oogie Boogie and Cruella. So we got in line and we did those. And this was where it felt like it was just so crowded. There were so many people. It took about 20 minutes to go through each of those lines. Since Oogie Boogie is inside, you can only see him if you're going through the treat trail, but Cruella is outdoors on a stage, the same as Ernesto is. So you do not have to go through the treat trail line to see them and watch them perform and interact. So these two treat trail lines you are moving through like at a snail's pace. It took forever to even get to the part of the line that had the candy. And so this was where it would have been better for us to just completely skip this at that point. I would have much rather gone on the Monsters Inc. ride than like spend 20 minutes slowly going through Cruella's line. It would have been much better to just kind of stand just to the side and watch her perform and interact for a little bit. Obviously, the villains feel like much more of a draw than the candy itself, although Disneyland is interesting because in addition to the regular Mars candy, they hand out goldfish and Rice Krispies and Sun Chips and apples. So there is some nice diversity to the candy, and we had a full backpack with us, so we were able to kind of dump out the candy into the backpack and load up more. But it really did not feel worth it to wait 20 minutes in line to slowly meander through, eventually get some candy, and then see the villain there. This was my very first after hours or special ticketed Disney event that I've been to, so I had assumed there would be reduced capacity or it would feel like less people than during the day, but this just felt like a total normal busy day. It was just so many people, and there's such crazy demand for tickets. I don't know how they could ever reduce the capacity more. But after the initial 3 treat trails we hit, it was getting close to 7 p.m. and we had a mobile order scheduled at Cocina Cucamonga. We got the birria tacos. And so there, as we were walking by, we saw kind of from a distance Agatha and her treat trail. We don't watch any of the Marvel stuff, never seen WandaVision, so didn't need to do her line. And then we also walked right past and had dinner right next to Yokai in San Francisco. That line was so incredibly long, and it was so much better not doing it because again, we were just right there eating dinner, and you could watch him interact and perform the whole time. Although I'll say Yokai as a villain is probably the least interesting in terms of the interactions that he can do. It kind of just talks about Hiro, Hamada, and the microbots. But it was cool to see a villain in kind of a very fitting setting. So this is where I personally much rather preferred having dinner and watching the villain perform and not waiting 20 minutes in line to go through the treat trail and get some candy. But after dinner, it was time to get in some rides. So we went over to Mater's Junkyard Jamboree. There was luckily no wait for this. And then after that, we went back to Avengers Campus and rode web slingers. It ended up being maybe like a 10 to 15 minute wait for the ride, so that really wasn't too bad at all. That felt like a decent wait time during the party. And then we timed that perfectly as we got out of web slingers. The Frightfully Fun parade was about to start, so we caught that from the entrance to Avengers Campus. I love the song. It's Halloween, Loween. It is the best Halloween parade song. My potentially controversial opinion, I hate the Boo to You song. It is so annoying and grating. So I loved getting to hear the Halloween Loween song. The parade itself is cute. It's not much of a spectacle, and it's also very short. There is some length added because the Headless Horseman comes by a few minutes before. And the parade itself really isn't too long, so I mean, I guess you're not taking too much time out of your night, but you'd also like something more substantial. Like the Boo to You parade as a parade looks way more impressive. The floats look much better. It looks and feels like it's longer. But to make sure we kept the night moving along, as we about got to the end of the parade, we headed up to Carthay Circle near the front of the park so that we could cut over and head to the Redwood Forest area. So right after the parade ended, we did end up going through the Judge Doom treat trail for a few reasons. So first of all, there was absolutely no line there. We were able to fully walk through. It wasn't shuffling along for 20 minutes. And also because Judge Doom was one of the other new villains, and I hadn't seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit for probably like 15, 20 years. And so we watched the movie beforehand and like, wow, that is not a kid's movie. So it was nice to see a kind of, obscure villain be brought up to life. So we already felt like pretty loaded up on candy after that. And then that was right nearby the Villain's Grove. So when we got in line for Villain's Grove, the wait time said it was about 30 minutes. And I think pretty soon after, the wait time on the app went up to 45 minutes. We probably waited like at least a solid 15 minutes for it. And this is something I feel like vloggers always talk about as being like the coolest, best thing there. It was something. I think a big downside is that, again, there's so many people, you're just kind of very slowly sardini shuffling through this area with kind of like lights and ambiance. As my partner Stefan, who I was there with, said, I'll paraphrase and take out the profanity, that was the stupidest thing ever. That was a waste of time. He wanted there to be like actual villains in there, like interacting and performing, which I think would have been much better and cooler too. The better parts of it were the areas that kind of cleared out a little bit of people that didn't feel so crowded. So it was, kind of cool ambiance and whatnot. But this is where like it's really not worth any wait at all. Like I like that they have something and it feels like a kind of nice start. But if you legitimately have to wait 30 minutes for it, like no, this needs to be like a much more cleared out kind of walkthrough area. And I think it also shows that there's not enough extra special exclusive stuff during the party, that this kind of thing should not have a 30-minute wait to do. But then when we did Villain's Grove, we were going to loop around the rest of the Pixar Pier area. So of course we started off, we went on the Little Mermaid, and like I said before, during the mix-in time, this had a 25-minute wait. You could see the long queue. This was beyond a walk-on, as in empty clamshells as far as the eye can see, which is the only way I'll ride the Little Mermaid ride. So it's your nice, entertaining little sit-down break. And then we continued around Pixar Pier. We walked past and saw Sid's treat trail. That then had a long line to go through, but he performs right there. You can see him just standing not in the line. So instead of waiting in that line, we went on and rode Toy Story Mania. This was probably like less than a 10-minute wait. It was advertised as longer, but there really wasn't much of any wait to get on. I always love doing this ride. I am much better at Toy Story than I am at web slingers. And then I was so excited to finally be able to ride the Incredicoaster at night. I've always wanted to ride it at night, but have never had an opportunity, and this was going to be my time to finally do it. And it was down, of course. So it was down most of like the night time. So would have loved to have ridden it, but of course did not quite work out that way. So the other character treat trails were there. We did not do Mother Gothel, and we did not see her. Just kind of, we were at the point of we don't need to go through the lines. And we saw Madame Mim perform. She didn't seem like she had much of a line, but we didn't need the candy and you could still just see her there. So we basically either saw or walked by all of the treat trails, and you pretty much definitely could do them all if you wanted to. It just made a lot more sense for us to like kind of enjoy and ride some rides. So at this point of the night, it was about like 9:45, like getting to 10 o'clock, and the party goes until 11 p.m. But we had to head out early since we had to make the drive all the way back down to San Diego, and we both had work the next day. I was traveling on a work trip to Denver. So if we were closer to the park and didn't have like a long drive back, we would have stayed a little bit later. But what was crazy was that like even this late in the night, I think I took this screenshot at 9:30. The line for Radiator Springs Racers was 75 minutes. And a little bit before that, it was 90 minutes. And that seems beyond ridiculous for a party. So we would have loved to have ridden Radiator Springs Racers, but a 75-minute wait at 9:30 at night on a limited ticketed party, that just felt a little ridiculous. Like, I don't know if it's like that at every party. I think the ride had been down a little bit earlier in the evening. We probably could have tried to ride single rider, but that's not as much fun when you want to ride it together. Most of the night, the Mission Breakout After Dark was like around a 30-minute wait, which would probably be less actually waiting in line. That's something that like I would definitely do. But my poor partner Stefan was beyond traumatized on Tower of Terror as a little kid, and he absolutely hates this stuff. So this is where I don't want to take the time out to like wait in line by myself or something. Plus I was able to ride it last year as a day guest. So that's the kind of one thing about this, is that DCA at Halloween time is great just as a day guest on, a normal day, with or without Oogie Boogie Bash at night. You can ride Mater's Junkyard Jamboree, you can ride the Luigi's Halloween overlay, you have Mission Breakout After Dark, all of the decorations, all of the amazing Cars Land decorations. So there's kind of so little extra that's like exclusive to Oogie Boogie that it's like the treat trails, where if you want to pay like a lot of money to get Halloween candy, like the villains are cool, but there's not enough extra stuff. So like the Halloween party at Magic Kingdom, they have the Hocus Pocus Villain Spectacular stage show, and they have the Halloween fireworks show. Here at Oogie Boogie, you just have like the kind of short parade. And so obviously the treat trails are much better than they are at Mickey's Not So Scary. It's kind of like the only thing that Oogie Boogie has. And so I by no means like didn't have a good time. I would definitely not pay to go to Oogie Boogie again. I would much rather spend like the same money on a day ticket and get to spend like the full day in the park and still get to experience like all that Halloween stuff. So I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand the hype over Oogie Boogie Bash. It's obviously so popular because if you did not get in the queue right when it opened to buy tickets, you were not going. Maybe it's just that there's so many locals that it's at least something kind of fun and different. I will say I did love being able to wear a costume in the park out. I would definitely never pay the same money to go to Oogie Boogie again unless they added all this stuff. I got a survey in my email the other day asking about your experience, and then also like, would you be interested in, they asked, would you be interested in a Hocus Pocus stage show? Would you be interested in a Nightmare Before Christmas stage show? A kind of maze or haunted house walkthrough? So it's like, yes, there needs to be something else added. They should have like some other version of like a World of Color show. That it's just that the treat trails themselves like aren't enough for a full event. And even though we were able to do rides, the rides that we did are the rides that oftentimes have lower weights. Maybe I was wrong, but I was expecting it to feel like lower capacity and kind of like you could get on Radiator Springs Racers and ride that. So again, it's not to say I didn't have a good time. I just feel like it's not worth the money to pay to like ever have to do it again, unless they add in a lot of extra stuff or like really new and interesting villains, like you add Yzma, you might have my attention. But that is my very long-winded review and recap of our time at Oogie Boogie Bash, getting to wear my Marnie Halloweentown costume. Even just getting to be inside the parks is a special exciting thing for me. So I'm extra excited because we got day tickets to go up to Disneyland the day before my birthday. So because obviously we were in DCA, we couldn't go over to Disneyland Park. So we're gonna be spending the whole day in Disneyland Park doing all the great stuff. And I've never been to Disneyland over Christmas time. So I'm very excited to see all the special decor and decorations up there. I did also get us a hotel room to stay the night, since I will say it was really rough, being all the hours in the park at Oogie Boogie and then driving the hour and a half back to San Diego afterwards. So we'll be going hard for a day and rope dropping at Disneyland in November. I do also have one more Halloweeny, not a DIY, but a crafting related video that will also be coming this month. So stay tuned for that. But thanks for watching.